so we would partner with them to make that happen. We also were involved early on in building a very large electronic homework system here in UMass, and this was before the days of WebCT or Blackboard or anything like that, which kind of took on a life of its own over the years. So we've done projects both small scale with individual faculty and sort of larger scale. We now do as well administrative projects for the universities, fairly large scale. So we have software engineers, we have web developers, but what we're talking about here are multimedia developers, 3D modeling, animation, video, and that's still one of the staples. We got, about an hour and a half, and figured we would use it for about an hour or so, maybe show you some of the things that we do. And then spend a half hour after that talking about what will happen over the course of the year, the opportunity for us to work with you on your projects, if that makes sense, and the different ways that you can do that. So and then we can kind of dialogue a little bit. And then as Allison said, do you have any stories? We do. But we want to start to get an idea and really be, not fully formed, barely formed, if you want, but just some sort of sense of if you did want to work with us and take advantage of the hours, what we through the delegated, how you might use that. And that'll give us a chance over the week to kind of catch you at dinner or tonight at the Lord Gap or something like that and talk about it a little bit and sort of come up with a preliminary plan. Okay, so I want to start a long time ago with some stuff that kind of got us into this world. Matthew, before he came to us, was working for the 5 colleges. Do people know about the 5 colleges in this area? It's university is part of this consortium of schools that are all within about 15 miles here from Hampton, South Hadley, and Amherst. One is Amherst College, one is Smith College, all women's school, Mount Holyoke, all women's school, Hampshire College, my alma mater, the Clayton School, in a lot of people's minds, but I had a good time. Those 5 schools have an organization that sponsors activities that sort of provide synergy to all 5. And one of the projects was called, it's a Mellon-funded project called the Multimedia Access Project. What it was designed to do back in about '98 was seed little grants to faculty to do projects in like these. And so Matthew had that experience before coming to work with us. And like some of you are probably thinking about your projects, some of them kind of took on a life of their own after the Mellon funding. And so in a couple of cases, when Matthew came here, one of the faculty was Letitia LaFollette, who's here in art history, and we sort of worked with her to get a 50 grant to sort of expand on what she was doing. So she put one little module to show that you could art history with a computer. Interesting, but in order to expand it, she needed more support. Another was an astronomy project from Amherst College, which we also helped to win NSF funding for. And so these things, sort of took on a life and really became something, which was a lot of fun. I want to show you, to start, what are we on the, I believe this one. Yeah, okay. And I want the Greek temple down at the bottom. So what you're looking at is a screen that's embedded in our homework system, because we took what we did with art history and we built it into homework activities. In the end, Letitia built 8 of these modules and envisioned 12. And they're now used in our art history survey course and have been since about 2000. Somewhere out here you'll see she's got a copyright 2001, which is when this was sort of rolled out for use. This is clunky. This is circa 2001, electronic homework technology, trying to embed something into a way that students in large courses could use this stuff and get credit for it, right? That was one of the keys, is not only was it out there, but that students would be graded on whether they used it and so forth. So has some introductory material.
Worship may be defined as encompassing all the activities in which humans engage to honor their gods. That includes the enactment of rituals such as sacrifices and processions, the erection of architectural monuments like the temple and altar, and the creation of art, such as the cult image and votive dedication.
The reaction of the students when we tested it was, well, this is what we get in class. Why do we want to see it on a computer? So in the second go-around, we built an interface to sort of show what she was doing as if it were something in class, but then would break it up by asking students to take and synthesize what they just saw by answering questions. And so here's a question about the temple was designed to be open on all sides. Why is that so? What was the role of the... Oh, it comes up with different questions sometimes. When I went through it before, it was a different question. But some of the ways that we wanted to get students involved. Adam, can you sort of scroll over the bottom parts here? This is a little, parts of the temple quiz, right? So what you've done is you've just seen about a 5-minute presentation. I'll put them on the microphones. Can people hear me? Oh, for the recording. Did the recording hear me? No? Okay. So this was a way of getting the students to engage with the material, not just to sit and watch it outside of class, right? And Adam, click on the next icon over at the top. And so first there was a chance to sort of go through and just scroll over the parts of the temple and see what they were, and then there's a chance to sort of quiz yourself on them. How does this work? Okay, and then we'll swap it around when Phil and Adam take it over. Okay. This is going to be interesting. Okay. Is it microphoning? No?
Is it on?
Okay. Well, I'll keep talking loud and we'll just assume that people can turn down the volume on the recording. Go next one over as well. Yeah, and so here, so the last activity here was to sort of build your own temple. And so I chose that. Where do we go next? The idea here being, and I'm not going to do this properly, but there are two kinds of Greek temples. There's Ionic and there's Doric. And so the task here is to build one that's consistently one style or the other. Forgot the columns, so I have to go back. Okay. And what are we missing down here, the bottoms? Aha, there we go. Nope, there we go. Okay. Having trouble with the thing here. The what? There we go. No? That way? All right. One of these? That? Okay. And so, build it. On the next screen, okay. Got it, okay. And so again, the idea is there's a rhythm to this, and it's like about 5 minutes of presentation, and then you stop and you do something interactive, right? And so obviously, I'm going to have to try again. So this is 2001, and there are 8 modules built out in this way on things like Buddhist art, Picasso and primitivism, the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, things like that. And were built by experts in those particular fields, mostly from the 5 colleges. And so Letitia worked with us on each one, so we had sort of the consistency of one faculty member helping, but always had an expert involved. And so each one in its scope was about the magnitude of what we're talking here. It would take about a week or 2 weeks of programming, but it would take a lot of planning time and sort of sitting and working with faculty on how to take what they do and put it into a format like this. So as I said, we were able to get a large grant to make that happen. So that's one of the kinds of things that are sort of being offered here, is sort of help conceptualizing how to do grant stuff. We've done a lot of grant work over the years. I wouldn't say we're great at getting grants, but you know, we can help in that regard. Let me switch gears now and talk some about another theme that I sort of hear running through this, which is cultural heritage projects. We've worked a lot over the years with the history department here at UMass, and in particular the public history program, which is pretty well known. And they became interested in the use of technology to teach history very early on, about 1996 or 97, and brought to us a project having to do with the Lizzie Borden murders, which was really an interesting Massachusetts story and a way of getting students, I should say, interested and involved in history, sort of draw them in and then get them to learn the methods of being a historian through that. A project that we worked on after that was with one of the local museums up in Deerfield, which has a very interesting colonial past, and gave us an opportunity to sort of build out a system again. This was something that started very small and expanded into an NEH and IMLS funded project, and so got pretty large scale, but allowed us to do things like build in online collections, sort of like a Mecca, for those of you guys who know what a Mecca is. This tool set was Omeka-like before Omeka existed. But we also had started with teachers, and so there were lots of teacher activities in here. And what was put in the collection, since it's a large museum collection, were things that the teachers wanted for lesson plans, right? So that was our selection mechanism for what to put in. So this is a successful project that the museum has created several subsequent projects which didn't use the same tool set, but which were sort of built on this idea. One of them was partnering with the Armory, the folks in the back from the Armory, on Shays Rebellion. This is another project that we did that was much smaller scale and sort of similar to the scope we're talking here, probably a little bigger, but had to do with the story of witchcraft in Northampton, which goes back to the 1650s when there were about 30 families in Northampton. And what we're looking at is an exhibit that was done for the Northampton Historical Society. And there was a great day when they wanted to unveil it, and they invited us to come over and talk about it. And we walk into the old building that was the Parsons home in Northampton, we're going way back, and there was no exhibit. And I looked around, and there was only a computer. And I thought, this is nervy. You know, the director is saying, this is my exhibit. It's all on computer. Given that it was about 2000 again, it was a fun day. But having built an exhibit version of it, we then started working with teachers, and the teachers didn't want to use the museum's version. They didn't mind the content, but they said it's too sort of declarative. You're giving everything away. With kids, you want kids to sort of read and process and work with the stuff. And so we completely reorganized the site, even though it's pretty much the same content. But again, this was about the scale, maybe a little larger, of what we're talking about here. And another large history project that we've worked on over the years, partly by taking a long span of history. The Armory was in existence for about 200 years. The Springfield Armory produced the muskets and rifles for the American Army up until the Civil War. And at the Civil War time, Harper's Ferry, the other armory, was destroyed. And so the Springfield Armory became the sole armory to produce weapons like the M1 and things like that up until it closed in 1967. And so you take something that's got 200 years of history and try and figure out how to fund that was an interesting process. And so we broke the history into chunks that we thought were sort of fundable as ideas. And the first one that we worked on was the history between the War of 1812 and the Civil War, which was when the Armory was sort of inventing a lot of the methods that became known as the American system. And if you think about how manufacturing works today, interchangeable parts and machines specific to certain aspects of industrial processes, the whole idea of Yankee ingenuity has a lot to do with things that happened at the Armory. And so one of the keys here was, for educational purposes, since our targets were schools primarily, was not to focus on the guns, right? Because the Armory's got 10,000 guns. And so that's one aspect of their mission, is to preserve all that. But there's also this very rich industrial history that stretches all the way across New England in north, south, east, west. So these are some cultural heritage kinds of projects that we've been involved in. Let's shift gears, guys, and go to Through My Window. This is a project that is current and is, you want to bring up like the homepage or something like that? It's a collaboration at Smith College, which again is an all-women's school and started an engineering program about 10 years ago that's really sort of taken off. And they're producing a fair number of engineering students each year. And the Springfield Technical Community College, which is actually on the same campus as the Armory, and is one of the local community colleges with a technical sort of bent. The woman there is the head of the physics and engineering department. This is an NSF-funded project, and we didn't actually help get this. They had the money and they came to us because they had partnered with a sort of straightforward web development company that, when really faced with this problem, had no idea what to do. But it was kind of like projects that are our bread and butter, kind of like what we're talking about here. So for us, it was a great opportunity. The target is middle school, primarily middle school girls. It can be any middle school kids. And the idea is to try and get them interested in engineering. And how do you do that? There's a couple of key ideas behind what they're doing. One is to essentially build stories that get kids interested and sort of sucked into what turns out to be engineering, but that's not how it's presented. So one of the principals in the project has written a book that's a Harry Potter-like novel, right? That is about, what's it about? Artificial intelligence. We were talking about it the other night, Eric, the Dennett conundrum, right? What happens if your brain becomes separated from your body? You know, what is consciousness? Things like that. And the fact that it's a book actually came after the system. When we started to work middle schools and after-school programs to get them interested in using the system, the book was online, and they said, you know, it'd be great to have a physical book that the kids could take home and show their parents and stuff like this. And once we got the book published, it's really been a hit. It's really been great to see. So Adam, let's walk through it a little bit. Our contribution was to take the book and with help from the graphic artists and videographers who are Smith students. This is all done by a Smith student who was like a sophomore when she started doing the art behind this, was to turn it in. There's a graphic novel that sort of expands on the story and goes beyond the storyline. And then there are online activities that are designed to get kids to think about, you know, what is artificial intelligence? How does that fit in with engineering? There'll be future modules on engineering ethics and on sustainability, and building in parts of the story about, you know, a tornado swept through Springfield a few years ago, which is very unusual up here in New England. Some of you guys live in Tornado Alley probably. But that was something that really grabbed the kids' attention. And so we're building on things like, you know, when houses have to be rebuilt or buildings have to be rebuilt, how do you do them in a sustainable way? So Adam, you want to?
Yeah, so like Dave said, we have a couple different modules here. We call them learning adventures. We currently have, I'll flesh out, it's called Rio's Brain. This is sort of our introduction to artificial intelligence, and I guess it's called the Dennett problem, where your brain is separated from your body, and this actually happens to one of the characters. And so when the kids start up here, they get some other pretty cool graphics. Right now we're just loading up the graphic novel here. And so we can just show you how it starts. We have some nice sounds here. And so these two characters are interacting with one another, and it turns out that this character, Rio, went on a camping trip with his father and ended up falling down a cliff searching for his dog, and he ends up having some brain contusions here, and they take him to a hospital. But it turns out that this hospital is a little nefarious. The name of it is SCARE. It's a acronym, but kind of implies that it's not really the best place. And it turns out that these people have actually removed his brain from his head and put some wireless connections in there, and he ends up seeing his brain floating in a tank here. Let's see if I can quickly get the... Yeah, so you can see, got a whole bunch of brains in tanks here. Who knows which one is his brain? But he overhears some of these doctors saying, oh, the project's just not working right. I guess we're going to have to eliminate this subject. And he's like, I'm that subject. And so he runs away from the lab and contacts his friend Sedina, and they have to figure out how are we gonna figure this out. And so she knows of a doctor named Dr. Who? Is it? No, Dr. X, right. Dr. Who comes later. And so she's the local computer scientist, the real engineer here. And so they figure if anyone's going to know the answer to this, we should go see her. They end up encountering her guard dog, but the dog knows Sedina, so they let her right in. So at this point in the adventure, now Rio has fallen unconscious. They don't know what to do, and so now it's up to the students to take over and start going through this house and interacting with everything and trying to figure out, what do we do? And so the first thing we come to is the Chatter Dog here, who we met in the graphic novel. And so again, we've got some pretty neat graphics here. The graphic novel itself has been an absolute hit with all the kids. They can't get enough of it. And so we start off here by first asking, what do you think intelligence is? So I'm just going to do something. Being really smart. Yeah, here we go. Case in point. And so one of the other aspects of the project is that they really wanted kids to interact with each other. So it's all well and good to start learning about engineering concepts and get interested in these things, but part of the world of engineering is collaborating with people. You can't do these things inside a black box. Anyway, you maybe could, but anyway. And so one of the things we really wanted was for kids to see the other ideas that kids in their classroom had. And so we can go and check out these shared ideas and see some of the things that other people have written here. So let's go with our first one. What is intelligence? What did other people think? And so the first thing we're presented with is our idea, so we can remember what that is. And then ideas from your friends. These are people who are in your classroom. This is something that the teacher can set up beforehand. We can, create all these users, so all these kids will be in the same classroom, and they, can't see anyone else. And we also have these ideas from around the world. These are really ideas from us that we kind of want to just feed to the kids here, but it's all...
If I can interrupt for a second.
Please.
This is one of the other key ideas behind this whole project is something called knowledge building, which is an idea out of Toronto, and I can't remember the folks who are responsible for it, but it's a sort of a new way of thinking about having children do, education studies, is to work together to build constructs, knowledge constructs. So this is very important to the Smith folks and the Stick folks, right? And
as you go along the number of things here, the more you do in the learning adventure, the more options there become to see what other people have thought. And the kids have found it fairly interesting. So the next thing we do here is there's a whole bunch of pages scattered around. And so, we kind of want to make this a bit of a game, but at the same time, kids are learning these concepts. So the pages that they pick up all over the place have, oh, well, this is an idea of intelligence. And they then decide, okay, well, I don't know if, I'm not sure if this is like my idea of intelligence. And so we'd go through and they get to scan, some cool little animations here. And so I've already done all that. And so one of the next things that you get to do is we watch some videos. Which is always entertaining as well. And so these ones are just about what can intelligent people do. So we can quickly look at some of these. Actually, no, let's go. There's a more interesting one here. And so part of the idea with these videos is to get kids to, if they have just in their mind, what is intelligence? Well, maybe you haven't necessarily thought of these different ways of being intelligent. So we show some videos of people doing different kinds of art. We have some espresso art here, or cappuccino. I don't drink coffee, so I don't really know. And we've also got, some videos of musicians, some videos of dogs doing tricks. And so it's like, well, if being intelligent is just being able to do math, what about this 5-year-old kid who's laying it down on the drums here and singing at the same time? Maybe there's something more to be said about that. And so along the way, we just try to get kids to think of these different ideas. And so that's the main idea of this learning adventure. As Dave said, we're working on other ones. The one that we're currently working on is the design process of engineering, of developing and revising and collaborating. And so that one, they get sent back in time. They end up falling in. There's a lot of falling into holes. They end up falling into this cave and find this time machine who says, hey, I need some help to get out of here, and I'll help you guys get out of here at the same time. And so they end up going around through time, visiting different areas. They go and visit the time of Nikola Tesla and Edison at the World's Fair when they're trying to decide whether to go with AC or DC. They also go back and visit Apollo 13. And they're at mission control when everything goes down, and so they have to try and help and decide, well, what do we do here? What's the process of figuring out these problems? And really just kind of getting kids engaged in that in a really interesting and graphically interesting format. And so one of the really fun parts of this, like I say, the page sorting is sort of a game. The kids certainly enjoy it, but we have some actual games here that are a bit more fun. So let's go through here. Got the chatter dog opening things up for us. And so for here, the first game we come to is the Guess My Number. And so again, this is, sort of introducing kids to the ideas of artificial intelligence. How would you program a computer to try and solve a problem? And so we start with the simple one. Guess a number between 100 and 10, or rather 1 and 100. And so the kids can start off just by, you think of a number for yourself, or rather the computer has thought of a number, and so you have to try and decide, okay, well, let's see if it's 44, and it'll tell you if it's too high or too low. Okay, well, that's too high. Let's try 33. Too high. Too high. Oh, it's really low. All right. Getting close. Hey! And so that's a really basic form of artificial intelligence. You're high or low. We then move on to a different kind of artificial intelligence. So first we need to write some stuff in the journal here. Blah, blah. Not a very good student. And again, along the way, I kind of went a little fast there. Along the way, it says, hey, why don't you go check out the shared ideas and see what other people have thought? So again, it's always trying to get kids to collaborate with each other and think of these new ideas and develop new ways of thinking. So this number game is the one where you have thought of the number. And so now we're switching the tables here and saying, okay, well, if you have a computer that's trying to guess this, how would they might do it? So let's go with my first guess of 44. And say, okay, let's have everyone guess. We have their first guess. So let's see. This one's too low, this one's too high, and this one's also too high. So then we do our next one. They guess again, and we can see that the numbers move. So our first guy just counts up by 1. Our next one is just counting down by 1. But our next one's doing something a little bit more intelligent here. So let's see. We're also too low here, too high there, too low there. We're getting close. Oh, so close. Get myself confused here. Hey! Casey got it in just 6 tries. And so again, just some really simple algorithms here just to try and get the kids interested. And again, we then prompt them, okay, well, what do you think each of their rules was? Okay, well, this one was count up by 1. This one was count down by 1. And this one, oh, well, geez, I don't know. They're really good at guessing. And so here we then say, okay, well, here's what's really going on. And just, like I said, just trying to introduce these concepts. And we're getting to the last one here. We'll just skip through this to get to our last game. And so finally, we get to our 20 questions game. We have a link out to another 20 questions game. Oh, wait, no. Let's try that. Here. And so this is a far more robust one that I highly recommend playing because it's pretty interesting when it actually succeeds. But so we have our far more simple one here. So we have these potential answers, and I don't know if you might have to crane your head here to see these questions we have. You know, is it made by people? Do people eat it? Is it bigger than a book? You know, your standard 20 questions. And then the kids go along and they say, okay, let's play. So you decide which one of these you think you're going to try and go with. We'll go with some cake here. Is it made by people? Yes. Do people eat it? Yes. Is it bigger than a book? Yes. Is it a cake? Yes, it is. And so you can then say, oh, did we actually successfully guess it? And we can say yes, but if we say no, it says, oh, well, I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. And so this is the point of this is to say, well, what's the limitations of something like a 20 questions game? You know, if I was thinking of a muffin, would I have gotten to would it have decided that I was thinking of cake because this is sort of the same thing? And so we then are saying, well, how could you possibly improve upon the 20 questions? And so one idea is, of course, to have more solutions. One is to have more questions. And again, we prompt the kids to give us these answers, which they can then share with each other. Some of the other stuff that we have here, again, we have these videos and whatnot, but we also have some slideshows. And so, as I said, with our next learning adventure, we're talking about Nikola Tesla in large part. And so with this one, we're talking about Alan Turing a lot. And so we have some information here just about who he was and giving some real world examples of people working with artificial intelligence to do things that kids might actually have heard of. And like I say, overall, it's been a really fantastic hit. They're clamoring for more, which we're trying to produce as quickly as we can.
Okay,
I think that's pretty
thanks,
much
Adam.
it.
Yeah, it's a 5-year project. It's approaching the end of year 3, and this was sort of the milestone we needed to hit, was to have a certain amount done, and NSF is happy, and we're moving forward with it. The catchment for this, the partner is the after-school programs across the state of Connecticut, which is a lot of after-school programs. One of the startup problems is just it takes a lot to get people to sign on and get going and some training and stuff. And so we're at the phase of scaling this up. I think it's going to be tested in Bridgeport. They've got 20 after-school programs coming soon. The feedback, it's interesting because I've gone and watched it used in a couple of different settings, which had a different demographic in each case. It was interesting. One was the campus school at Smith College, which is a school where there are lots of professors' kids, and it's sort of a gifted environment, very, very rich, enriched, and so forth. And watching one of the principals debrief the kids after they use this, the kids were really caught up in what is intelligence, what makes people think, what does all of that mean. It was really great to see how engaged they were. And also last summer we used it with a program from the city of Holyoke, which is a kind of down on its luck city that was quite well to do in the 1800s and now is fairly impoverished. And Girls Inc. runs programs there to get girls, sort of empower girls and get them interested in things like science and engineering. And these girls came in the summer and did this for about a week, and were debriefing them, were saying things like, I never thought about being an engineer, but that's really interesting. This could be really fun for me, And so 2 sort of very different groups responding in their own ways, but being very responsive. So that was very encouraging. So let's shift gears a little bit. let's look at some of the kinds of modeling projects that we've done. Phil has been involved in a lot of the projects that have to do with nanotechnology. There's a big nanotechnology center on campus that is funded by NSF, and its goal is not to do basic research, but to do research into the manufacturing processes of nanotechnology. Nanotech has to do with very small scale, what is it, things that are 100 times smaller than a human hair? Is that the scale of nano?
Roughly. Yeah.
Okay. And so we were brought on board to help with their educational mission. The center has a mission to sort of produce things that work at the undergraduate, the K-12 level, things like that. So Phil will demo some of those. And we've also been involved in some projects with our biology department looking at what's called Evo-Devo. And that's evolutionary development and sort of, you know, they're interested in questions like, you know, if whales were once land animals, where'd their legs go and stuff like that. So Phil, you want to take it away?
Sure, yeah. So this is some of the multimedia stuff we've been working on lately, and I've been with CSD for about 5 years. A lot of the early stuff was modeling, video editing. Lately I've been getting more into like interactive JavaScript stuff. I know a couple of you were looking at some Unity issues. So yeah, this is a style leader for a series on self-assembly that we're working on, which is the process of sort of encouraging nanoscale structures to build themselves, since they're too small to build from the top down in any sort of cost-effective way. I'm wearing these aviator goggles. Well, today we're looking at shapes on a plane. If you want things to put themselves together, first you have to understand how they fit together. We see the patterns things make all around us, all the time, whether we notice them or not. And all of those patterns follow the same rules. Now, this is the kind of thing that scientists love to study. But the question is, where do we start? Well, believe it or not, scientists like starting with the easy stuff. And it doesn't get much easier than flat, and flat doesn't get much easier than squares. We see squares covering planes all the time. Checkerboards, graph paper, your kitchen floor. Squares are easy, but when you break those squares in half, like so, you get right triangles. Now those can be morphed into equilateral triangles. Bunch those up 6 at a time, and you got yourself some hexagons. Now those three shapes, squares, equilateral triangles, and hexagons, are special because they make what we call the regular tilings. The only three patterns that completely cover the plane onto infinity with only one shape, with only one edge length, and with only one angle. They show up everywhere. In fact, it turns out that every repeating pattern ends up looking a lot like one of these. Take octagons, for example. Now they have 8 sides, and when we put them together, they leave these little square-shaped holes. Those should both be clues, and yeah, when we put them together, they do make a square-shaped grid. Circles, on the other hand, make this pattern, which is a hexagonal grid if you connect the blank spaces between the circles, and a triangular one if you connect the centers of the circles. Every repeating pattern on a flat surface, no matter how complex, always has one of these fundamental symmetries beneath it. You can always draw squares, triangles, or hexagons on top of it. So every repeating pattern is based on irregular tiling. But there are some patterns that don't repeat themselves. Irregular tilings, like this one, will go on forever in all directions without ever repeating themselves. These patterns are a lot less common, but they do show up from time to time. In this video, you've seen us try on aviator. So yeah, it's a bit more of the formal learning market. that was a follow-up to a series on magnetism. This is our most viewed
An electric generator is a device that
video of all
converts
time.
mechanical energy
We
into
beat
electrical energy
million
using
views
electromagnetic
earlier this year.
induction.
You can see the battery, the commutator, the brushes, the copper wire loop, and the permanent magnet.
So on. So, on the more interactive side, we've been working on the Evo.
Can I stop you for a moment?
Sure, sure.
These are going out onto the website that supports the educational mission of the center, right? The video stuff you basically did up on the 3rd floor of our building, right? Building a green screen room.
Yeah, this one we did. The latest footage we got Amherst Media to help out with.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
But not super high tech. And the other video is out on YouTube. Is that where that's where it got the 1 million hits and so forth?
1 million
And
hits on
so
YouTube.
it's part of the center's outreach mission, but also they're putting these things just sort of out for public usage. And again, NSF funded, large-scale research center on campus, but with a carve-out for the educational mission of the group.
All right. So this is part of a grant application that's in progress. We're hoping for an informal learning grant from NSF to do sort of museum audiences, public audiences. This was originally pictured as a kiosk, then maybe a web-based thing, possibly a curriculum module. And it kind of goes through the evolutionary history of the whale, which started as an ambush hunter. It looked a bit like a wolf. It would lurk in shallow water and jump out and surprise things. And after a few million years of that lifestyle, it started looking a lot like a crocodile, and then slowly moved further out into the sea. And as it did so, its legs changed. And in Basilosaurus, you have the top marine predator of its day, and it still has fully formed legs, but they're smaller, not really too useful in swimming. And then suddenly, they disappear, and you're left with leg bones that look a bit like this, that are just kind of floating in the blubber. And look at
Whales still have leg bones.
Yeah.
They're just not exterior anymore.
Exactly.
Right.
And this is sort of the jumping off point for the latest iteration of the grant, which tells a story going through the paleontological record, the genetic way that this could happen, embryology and such. And
so again, this started out as part of a career grant, and NSF awards promising young investigators something like $500,000 over 5 years for their research, and a piece of that goes into the education. And then a second stage was funded by an internal grant here on campus, and we're still sort of looking for that big opportunity to move it out either at the high school level or the undergraduate level, sort of, building up a project.
So this one is pretty similar. It's got slightly more complicated modeling and also some interactivity. This is looking at the organizers which tell the developing limb how to grow. So you can replicate some experiments that people have done on developing limbs, where, for example, if you splice a second copy of this organizer onto the other side of the limb, you get a second copy of the hand. And on the other hand, if you get rid of it entirely, you wind up with something that looks an awful lot like the vestigial leg bone of a modern whale, which ends up being the punchline of the mystery. They developed a mutation which knocked out that second organizer in the hind limbs. And
one of the goals in what you just showed is to create an interactive version of that students can play with. And so you ask them questions. You say, how would the leg go away, right? How would the bones sort of, what processes would you invoke given the levers that you can pull in terms of the organizers and the other elements of the biology that's underlying that? Are you flashing index cards? How much time do we have? Okay. I think we can move there. I had one more question for you, Phil, which was the tools that you use to implement these, because I think people might find that interesting.
Yeah, well, I do most of the modeling in Cinema 4D, and a lot of video editing work in, we were using Final Cut Pro, but now it's Adobe Premiere. But a lot of the more recent stuff over here has used a lot of JavaScript and web-based platforms sort of stringing things together. For example, this one, if it'll work, there we go, uses HTML video files, which I rendered out quickly. And it'll play one, feed into the next one, and then just loop like this forever, so you can give your presentation with something moving in the background instead of something still. And so it's really working on combining various different media and platforms and applications. And generally, as a rule, I have no idea how to do a thing before I start doing it. So if any of your projects involve checking out a potential software, looking for a way to do something, you're not sure if it can be done, that's definitely something that we can work on for you. And yeah, so if there are any questions or...
Adam, could you say a little bit about how Through My Window is implemented?
That's exactly what I was thinking. You know, when we started Through My Window, we had just adopted Drupal as a CMS on campus, and so we really wanted to... Oh, sorry, right, I forgot. We're mic'd up here. We really wanted to showcase it as a technology that we can use for building these sort of things, that we can have an interactive, sort of like a game interface through the web. And so we used Drupal for it, and it ended up being a project. You know, it's the software isn't made to do what we want to do with it. It's mostly for, you know, kind of a blogging sort of platform. You know, it's got that right out of the box. It's also got a lot of commerce stuff built into it. And so we were really kind of pushing this technology, and we still are to this day because we're still developing new stuff here. We were really pushing the technology to its limits, and we're actually at the point where we're starting to just create our own parts of Drupal. One of the advantages of it is that it's open source. You know, it's the double-edged sword of open source. But it allows us to be able to create new tools from scratch. It's written PHP, MySQL, and we like I said, we've really pushed it, but it does allow us to do what we want to do with a little bit of work.
And if I could add to that, the reason we chose Drupal was because of the scale and because of the requirements of having kids in this world associated with classes and teachers and things like that, and really needed to protect the privacy and organize kids in a way that Drupal is set up to do. And so it would manage all the permissions and the privacy and security and allow us to roster groups into their own certain areas and things like that. So part of the choice there was because this problem was presented to us fully formed. We weren't part of the grant writing process, but knowing we had all the after-school programs in Connecticut to deal with, we needed to pick a tool that didn't require us to rebuild all of that machinery. And so it really was a challenge to Adam and the development group to say, well, we've got this big platform that we have to use. So let's try and get some of the really interesting graphics and things coming out of Smith into a format that'll work in that world. And so far, it seems like we're succeeding.
Yeah. You know, like I say, we're working on our next learning adventure at this point, and a lot of the stumbling blocks that we encountered with the first one, we've learned from, and it really makes the development go a lot more quickly. But that said, we're still looking to improve upon the tools that we have here, and so that's why we're looking to do some more custom development on it to make it really fully robust and fully extensible.
Do we have till 10:45 or?
We do, but we have an exercise and we have some discussion. And
Exercise? Okay. With the cards? Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to just throw it open and ask what sort of things people have questions about or find interesting in this or connections to what you want to do. You know, one of the things in the exercise is to say, what sorts of technologies have you thought of or occur to you that would help you in your project as we start to think about how to organize the 12 to 20 projects that will probably emerge that we'll be helping with. You know, there are questions of, do you want to work on all 20 of these at once and try and manage, you know, communications with 20 people at a time? Or we're thinking of kind of binning this and offering you windows so that we can work on 2 or 3 projects at a time. Given that we have like 40 hours roughly per project, if we try and tackle everybody at once, I think a lot of those hours are going to be in the communication overhead of, you know, trying to keep up over the course of a year and context switching when we were working on something in November and have to come back to it in April. So these are the kinds of things that we wanted to talk about at this point. First of all, do you guys have questions? Sure.
I love this project. You know, I had that when I was a kid and I wanted to do it.
Uh-huh.
I'm really interested in, because you have funding as part of your grant, test it and learn what do the students learn from it. So I was hearing some comments from the presentation, like you're trying to get kids to collaborate with the exercise, encouraging-based thinking, the exercise with the artificial intelligence, get some number, introduce them to it. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you're actually testing if they got those messages and how you're trying to find out, like, if it changed their motivation or kind of engagement with this topic?
Sure, yeah. A lot of it, the evaluation that's going on is qualitative. It's, you know, doing some surveys after the students use it, students or after school, you know, kids. It's funded by the informal side of NSF, so its target is after school, though it seems to work equally well in a school setting. Some focus group activity, things like that. We're not really doing a lot of testing, real testing, to try and you know, truly parse out, did they learn this from that? But as I was saying before, and just watching some of the informal debriefings, it seems to have an impact, which as a developer, it's exactly what you want. It's, you know, it's when you get to try the cake or the sauce or something, you know. But it is a formal NSF project. It has a formal evaluation team working with it. Because we built big homework systems here and other kinds of large online systems, and they've all been grant focused, we've been doing evaluation over the course of the art history project. We did a pretty interesting evaluation of the impact of that and found that in the year before it was introduced to the year after it was introduced, you could see a change in the quality of the essays the students were writing on their final exams, which was kind of eye-opening. It was like, wow, there's really something here, you know? So I'm not convinced, and it's kind of hard in after-school settings because you don't, you know, they're all different and they're very informal. And so some kids will spend a little time, some kids will spend a lot more time. I think it'll be easier to do the evaluation in school settings because all the kids sit down, they all work on it and so forth. But
we are collecting all this data. So one of the things that we do, so you know, the page collecting thing, at different points we offer them the option, okay, well now that you've gotten some new ideas of intelligence, would you like to resort some of these ideas? And so one of the things I'm working on in the background right now for some of the other project members is some tools to actually analyze that data and say, okay, well, here's their initial idea of intelligence, here's their revised, here's their final idea. And so we're not at that point of really being able to analyze it, but we're collecting that data and trying to create the tools so that we can begin to see, okay, well, did they change their idea of intelligence? Did that make an impact on them? But we don't have it yet. Yeah. The idea is collect as much data as we possibly can, and then in the end, see what we can actually use. Or have too much.
Now, the ability of these systems to collect data is like a whole new world, because we took the model from art history and built a way of doing computer science where the textbook is integrated with the assessment that's going on. And so students are sort of reading through their text and then doing little programming fragments as they're going. And then they'll go off and do homework, right? And because we're collecting everything that's going on and we can kind of observe, you know, there's a pattern in college of students who skip the textbook reading and go straight to the homework, right? And they'll only refer back to the textbook if they feel like they need to. Well, you can actually see if they're doing that in this world, because you can see when they're doing the textbook part because they're answering questions, right? And then, so we split one of the classes into, you know, who did the homework first and who did it the right way, who read first. And you could see a difference in their performance. I mean, the ones that really took the time and read through did better on the exams. You never had that data before, and we worked with publishers for years, and you could tell the publisher that the students weren't reading the book, and they were really using the electronic resources more, and they just didn't get it. But now you can show it. Do you know what I mean?
Which
So
is also something that we're trying to do with this, you know, because what that really involves is being able to see times and whatnot. So, you know, like I said, we have videos on here that after you watch them, you're supposed to answer questions, but we don't know if the kids have actually watched it, if they just clicked it and said, yeah, okay, whatever, I'm going to go back and just start answering my journal. And so that's another thing that we want to add in to the system here, because, like I say, you know, just having all that data, it really gives you an eye-opening perspective on what are they actually doing with the system, how are they interacting.
Was there another question? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just want to say great presentation, great project.
Thank you.
For to see this particularly beautiful. I was just curious how many programming hours are behind this.
Which? This one?
Yeah, what portion of the budget?
A lot. Right.
I mean, we had many people working
the whole
on it.
marriage of Drupal with this sort of interface was a lot of work,
Yeah.
and we've been on the project 2 years, and well, the funding level for for our side of it is about 70,000 a year, and if you take away the university's overhead, it's like 50 or something like that. But we put more hours into it than that. I mean, it's such a wonderful project.
Yeah. A lot of hours.
And you know, you just can't stop till it's done. And so, again, one of the problems with stuff like this is if you've never done it before, it's very hard to predict how long it's going to take. And so we're actually, over the next 2 years, sort of changing the approach a little bit so that it's not quite as technology as intensive, but we want to sort of keep the kernel of what's working as part of that. Jennifer? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was just wondering if there were any other software that you know that would allow to do something like this easier, or if things maybe have come up since working on it.
Adam, could I address that?
Please.
Because we built big online systems and homework systems and administrative systems for our campus, we knew that all the machinery behind that takes forever to build. And so, you know, I was kind of the driving force behind, you know, there are many tools that you could build something like this where it would work on your laptop and it would be wonderful, right? And they'd be so much easier to use and take so much less time. But, you know, there's no easier way to torpedo an NSF project than to have a predator come into a class and, you know, be able to get into something. So security was really paramount, ease of use, administrative tools, and all of that you get with a system like Drupal. And so we thought, you know, there's so much money going to be saved and so many headaches avoided. And we wound up spending money trying to fit the nice stuff the students did into Drupal. But I sleep better at night. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have to reiterate. I mean, you know, are there tools out there? Yeah. You know, I don't know that I'd want to approach something as big as this with as many facets as it has with something less robust as Drupal, as our CMS.
But I would say, following up on that if this really took off, and there's some signs that it might, I mean, it just is catching on, that we could go after a Raytheon or some other big engineering, GE, a big engineering company, to take and rebuild the whole thing. I mean, a lot of the most successful systems that we've done have been built 2 or 3 times, right? Because you get it built, and then you realize where all the warts are. There's some question as to whether performance-wise, Drupal's going to hold up to hundreds of students using it at once. We don't know.
Got a lot
that
of
yet.
overhead.
Yeah, right.
Overhead.
And so I'd love to be able to rewrite it and just write it from the ground up to do the right stuff. But it would take
Probably something in $1 million, $2 million, something like that. And you know, that Raytheon's got big budgets for certain things. Do you want to?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's move into the interactive portion of this session. The point of David's curriculum and possible view is to give you a sense of the type of work they've done in the past. And what they've shown you has been a very small window into a lot of really interesting work that they've done with computing technology, primarily for educational use. And they're very willing to go beyond what they've done and to go outside their comfort zone to learn new things. So what we're going to ask you to do now is write an index card with your name on it and your wish list. Well, your wish item. So one item, and think of it as if I have 40 hours of a really smart technologist. And if I could ask somebody to help me with a task, what might that be? It could be software testing. I would kill for 40 hours if someone hammer on my software and find the reproducible bugs and help me work on our next development. So that would be completely automated. The projects that were mentioned today may resonate with what you're working on, may not, but there are other projects and other tasks that these guys have done that could help you. So what you're looking to do is scope a task that can be successfully concluded in 40 hours of time. It may be, gosh, I consult with faculty all the time on 3D software, and I wish somebody had put together a list of all of the free 3D modeling programs and an analysis of their strengths and weaknesses. That would be super helpful to me at this moment in my life. To the extent that these tasks are going to benefit others in the community, awesome, and those are things that would be posted on the website. If somebody does an analysis of the free 3D modeling programs available and look at the strengths. That would be something we would post and hope other people find.
Can I have a marker?
So the task, your name, the task, scope to be possible within 40 hours, what the deliverable would be. So I would love help doing an environmental scan in anticipation of a grant proposal, and I need that by February. Did I leave anything out?
Yeah, and at this point, because we're going to see your lightning rounds later in the week when your ideas are more fully formed. So just think of this as a first pass at an idea, and you can change your mind down the road. We're just trying, for our own sakes, to get a sense of what you're thinking, so that we can possibly bend some things together. Like if a lot of people want to use Unity, that's good to know, and that will feed into our thinking. The other aspect is, again, the idea of scheduling with you. And so what we'd like to do is to be able to divide the year into chunks, maybe 2-month chunks, and work with you intensively over some 2 or 3 month window. And so if you could, what I'm going to do is write the parts of the year up here and number them. And if you could say first, second, third preference in terms of when you would like to work, right? And if that's too constraining, then we'll talk, right? Because we don't want to over-constrain people. But it would really help us to be able to work on like 2 or 3 of these at a time.
So we can actually pool our hours. So if we all have a community project, we wanted some type of functionality in Unity. And all 4 or 5 of us agreed, we could say 40 hours times 5 would be 200 hours.
It's not my call, but I think that's a good idea. I mean, Lisa and Allison will make the call on that. But I think that's actually a good way to think. Right, that's right. Right. Yeah. Yes?
Who was doing ours? We have a Spanish translation, actually, of the book on the site here.
But we didn't do it.
But I don't know who did it.
Well, that's happening at Smith, right. No, I don't think we
I can read a
Japanese.
little bit of Spanish.
We have
but
expertise in
nothing,
Japanese. We have a native
yeah, I was
Japanese
going to say, we can do Japanese.
systems developer, yeah. Okay, so
Calendar here?
I guess July, August.
Okay, so as you get your kits done, raise your hand.
And I'm putting the parts of the year that we're talking about up here. Am I doing this right? I'm supposed to come up with 5. March. Did I start with the wrong?
You got to do May.
6. May, June. We didn't want to do May, June, right? Because that's too.
I mean, that could be fine. It
Okay.
depends on what the task is.
Well, the next institute is in June, right?
Right, but it may be an altruistic
Okay.
research.
So think of the year as 6 parts, and tell us in order, if you have an order, the ones that work best for you. And we'll play around with that as we get them all back. But again, you can change your mind between now and Saturday, because we'll be watching the lightning rounds and sort of using the cards that you've given us to take some notes and refine our thoughts.
If I had access to a smart clipstop for a week, what would I ask them to do?
I think John's going to use it, though.
Oh, what?
I think they want to use.
Oh, this machine.
Can you use this machine?
I don't know.
Okay.
We can switch machines during the break.
They are. Okay, so Steve's going to come back, Steve Pelot, because he says he'll have to make a new tape. If we switch computers, he has to do a new.
Right, so he had wanted to switch computers in the break. Is this your computer still?
No, this is mine.
This is Adams, right.
Okay. So yeah, during.
Whose is this?
This is John's.
Well, that's John's. Okay.
Yeah. So now you guys were.
We're using the VGA, so
And
he
you
can
were
stay on the.
We're not going to mess with the. I'm more interested. You guys were using wireless.
Wireless? Yes. Well, the thing is that since I have a net ID here, I can sign in.
Yes.
But EduRoam works here. Do you guys do you use EduRoam at?
Yeah, but to get
UT?
it to.
I just need to get into the internet.
He tried it this morning and it was very slow. So if you would log
Yeah,
in.
I was gonna say, let me see it here.
Okay.
I'll
Let's
just
wait
get it
to
set.
turn it clear that we'll mess up the connection.
Okay. Here, that's mine.
But do I have to use it?
Thank you. That went very well. Thanks, Ed. Nice job breaking it up. It was really good. Oops, I'm standing in front of the dates. Are people interested in seeing the book? I can pass it around. Sure, okay. Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun when it's not too much work. Oh, you know what? I should have brought some of the flyers. I think Lisa's taking them up there.
Oh,
Sure.
we're using VPN right now? No. Oh, okay, good.
It started out as a small project, not small, it started out as a project down in Springfield that was a math-science partnership, NSF funded. And so it was a professional development program for the Springfield schools. And the woman from STIC was running it, the Springfield Technical Community College. And she brought the Smith people in to just talk at some of those, and they started talking and thought, this would be great, what a good idea. And so they got together and wrote the NSF grant. And with an education professor at Smith, who's responsible for some of the ideas about knowledge building and stuff like that. Yeah.
How do they find the people who actually write the script or the story?
The woman who wrote the book is the wife of the principal investigator at Smith, who's an engineering professor. But she also has an engineering background. So it's pretty amazing that she's such a good writer, yet also a good engineer, you know. Well, it just was serendipitous that they were married, you know. Yeah, right. But she's very imaginative. And the Smith students are incredible. They're just so good. Because they're doing a lot of video work. And, uh-huh. Yeah. Right. And it's amazing because they run part of the design process as a class in the engineering school. And so the cast of characters changes every semester. And it's like there are always new ideas cropping up, you know. So part of it's a matter of kind of steering it along so it doesn't go off in different directions and things like that. And so Matthew does a lot of that, who's not here today. But Matthew's really good at synthesizing. Yeah, right. But we're afraid we're going to lose the artist because they're going to do a second book, so it's going to be a whole second series. And it'd be great to have her on board for that, but she's going to graduate. Yeah. Oh yeah. Her credits on the book cover as the illustrator, Evanly. Yeah. She went off to Germany to study abroad, and they're feeding her work in Germany, trying to get her to keep working.
Since they've only handed it with 3D print, but I don't know. That's a called Allison.
Hey, no Alex today, huh?
Yeah.
It's good to have you here, though.
Yeah.
I thought you were leaving, so Alex said you're here for another week or two, a couple of weeks.
For about 2.5 weeks.
Uh-huh. Yeah, good. We got our proposal in, such as it was.
Yeah.
It's such a crazy process to be writing your own RFP, you know? So we were just passing it back and forth. And there are things about it that are wrong and contradictory still, but they'll work it out. I mean, I'm confident. We just had to meet the deadline that they had. But I think we're there.
I think it looks pretty good. I mean, I know there's still some stuff.
Well, Alex did a lot of work. There was one point where it sort of was coming together, but it was really a statement of work. It wasn't a call. And Alex must have talked to Philadelphia, and they gave him some instructions because he completely reworked the whole thing. So I sat down with it all. Yeah, and so I sat down with what Frank had done and went through the same process. I used the template of what Alex did, and in the sort of home document, there was so little mention of either project in the end, and all of that was in the appendix, right? That it was easy just to graft Eleanor Roosevelt onto what Alex had done. So.
I've been reading these as you've handed them into me. Dave has not had that luxury, but let's do this together.
Okay.
I'm going to say that you are nothing if not demanding. So let's talk through some of these. And I'm reading them out loud for discussion.
Do you want to be mic'd up?
Sure. The thought is we're reading these out loud for discussion so that if you do have people who are working on similar tasks, you can start discussing amongst yourselves and discussing with Dave and his crew those overlaps. So there likely will be some overlaps. So from Ed, his task, discover methods for publishing serious games in academic environments for wide public dissemination using the Unity 3D game engine. Costas. Oh, the task is Android platform mobile programming, advice and or technical support for a mixed reality application in a museum and archaeological site, for a prototype for an application in a museum and archaeological site. Miriam, 2 possibilities. 1, create an engine by which an individual user's path can be tracked and the data saved in an online 3D environment. And the deliverable would be the tracking the tracking program. And the other option would be a research paper on software platforms for such a tracking engine through an online game.
And you're doing the island in Greece that is a recreation of the island, right? Because people can't go there?
Right.
And you were interested in sort of empirical data on how people move through the space. That's really interesting, yeah.
Okay, so we've got
Could I go back? Could I go back? Costas, this is a little bit similar to what the Armory group is interested in up there. Those guys are a different project, but we're going to be working with them on mobile apps for Armory stuff.
Okay, we've got Magda, 3D animation rigging, realistic movement of characters in the folklore tale. An elephant, snake, bird, farm animals. Phil, this is right up your alley. All right.
Phil, we cut Phil off before he could show the Pakicetus, which was the whale 50 million years ago walking through the jungle. But that's really interesting.
Okay. We've got Thomas, who's looking for 3D printing of the Blacksburg 16 houses, which is actually 96 houses. So we will have to have a negotiation with the library on what's feasible there. Do you currently have watertight models? I do. Okay, so.
And what is the Blacksburg houses? Blacksburg, Virginia?
We have 3D printers too, but I heard it had 50 of them. I saw the picture.
And you have 50 houses. How convenient.
96.
96. Okay. But what's the significance of the Blacksburg, Virginia, right?
Yes, that's the original foundation of the town. So we're going to 3D print out the buildings. I'm going to CNC the terrain out of, we have a huge CNC machine.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to put the buildings, use that as a point cloud, and then augmented reality of it. You go over it.
Sounds like something for you, yeah. 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 Yeah, right.
Oh, Mr. Bill, oh, no.
Take 3D models and 3D print them. Again, so for present, when you walk into a room, that this is not just a still artifact, but you can do an augmented layer on top of it.
And you've done some 3D printing, right? Yeah, okay, good.
Okay, Hannah, help create new lesson or integrate into current archaeological methodology 3D technologies as a part of becoming an anthropologist or archaeologist, because this is how we do research now. This is the future. Awesome. David, Neville, avatars for a first-person immersive game in the 13th century convent. So technology may be Unity or Blender, so we got another Unity. Avatars, a dialogue tree, and 2D interface with text.
So the 13th century convent, the idea is to sort of recreate that? Right, that's right. You're doing the walls, right? Wait, medieval walls? Who's doing that? The church walls with medieval? Is that you? Someone talked about that yesterday. Because I was thinking we're doing a project similar to the Armory with the Eleanor Roosevelt site, where it's all about the pictures on the walls that were in Eleanor's house, because there were hundreds of pictures. But
I can do that, though. I can't do avatars.
Okay. Well,
but David, your need is for the avatars, not the convent.
I could do the modeling myself, but this is kind of this empty space. I'll kind of show you what I did yesterday.
Okay.
It's sort of like
Mm-hmm.
It's empty, so you have something to talk to, and I would do rigging, and just dialogue.
Okay. This sounds to me a little bit like the Blackfriars project.
Which is Kirk.
Yeah, Kirk?
But we'll see what he asked for.
Okay.
Natalie, an environmental scan of mixed reality projects used for education and training, including but not limited to cultural heritage focus. So an environmental scan that talks about the summary of the project, the funding sources, description of the software and hardware used. Very useful.
Okay.
David Klein, we have an iPad app we've developed using Unity and Mateo, but we currently have no website for it. At the low end, I'd like a website that highlights the app and associated history and primary sources. At the high end, a web version of the application itself. Oh, in 40 hours?
Well,
okay.
But as it happens, that's what we're working with the Park Service on, is web apps,
Okay.
basically, and a way of doing that. So that's a project where if we waited a little longer into the year, our own skill set would already be building probably.
Perfect. Lauren, researching and implementing augmented reality for placing digitally reconstructed buildings into the real landscape. So augment AR. Kirk, oh, I'm going to have trouble with your, I'm going to try this. Okay. No, it's actually like kind of architectural and cool. You could have a font called Kirk. Assistance with creating a neighborhood site plan that can be fed into a game engine for navigating a 3D model. So,
So is this similar to the Blacksburg project?
In
terms of, you've got the information from lawyers and things about the site, right?
Yes.
And so building a set of buildings conceptually.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Heather, Heather is nothing if not demanding. I read hers first and I was like, oh my God, that's hard. Assist in formulation of a conceptual framework to manage content in a 3D module, some sort of 3D module content stored in a post-GRE
SQL, Postgres, right.
Postgres.
Is that right? Postgres, right.
Database. That seems hard, okay. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Feeding elements of what?
3D models in and out, elements. So now you have a sort of set of 3D models that are stored in the database. And so it's not static in the sense of you can move around and you can put in the database, but it's static in the sense that you have this one model of the landscape and you can that model out for another and reach the database without, it's not automated. An expert has to go in behind the scenes and subject ID the geometry physically. I can explain this later.
Well, but one question about it, is the problem that you simply want to augment the model you have, but it's still a static model? Or is it that the model is going to be dynamic?
You have a model that's the entire landscape, including features in it, and you want to be able to automatically cut features out of the model and take them out.
To what end?
For an advanced AI, Google might be able to help you, but we
Wrong workshop. No,
okay,
sorry.
No. Well, so we will revisit.
Well, we'll talk, though. We'll talk. I mean, one of the things we can help you with is why is it that hard, right? Is to understand why it's that hard,
right.
So that, you can write a grant or something like that.
That one scared me. Yeah, no, okay.
I don't quite understand, but.
Okay, so Glenn, I would like help with Unity scripting. It would involve tweaking existing scripts or snippets of scripts. My main goal would be to get a customized navigation system, a variant of the standard Unity character controller. If there's time, I'd also like to link that to a GUI. All right, Unity.
Who's Glenn?
Glenn is there.
Glenn, okay.
Okay.
Right, okay.
Elaine Sullivan, possibly help with my 3D model in programs vSim, CityEngine, or some other photorealistic 3D viewer. Not View. Please tell me not View. No. Okay. Tutorial.
Isn't this what you use?
Yeah.
vSim?
Tutorial videos for users, perhaps.
So this one's for you. You can do this one. No, 40 hours.
Trust me, she has me on speed dial already. Okay, so perhaps tutorial videos for users, creating time sliders for models, moving models between platforms, and making renders or videos of models. Lynn, I'm working on making an immersive environment for teaching medieval languages and cultures using Unity. Needs an environmental scan of good tested games for language learning, development of a web training series for Blender and Unity to get new grad and undergrad students involved in the projects. Not new Unity.
And who's that?
That's Lynn.
That's Lynn? Okay.
My concern is, like, if I get you guys to do 40 hours worth of work, then I'm going to still want you to
we're thinking of the training thing, might
Yeah,
be the way to
right.
go, like how to
Train,
provide
teach you to fish.
recreate
Yeah,
visual
yeah, yeah, right.
All right. Gurpreet, game concept for collection of crowdsourced through game players, annotations and transcriptions of the 3D content. So working with historical monuments, how to differently present the content depending on the target player or viewer, looking for architecture at different levels of the data to be presented to the viewer. I'm kind of mangling that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so basically, first thing is like, we have to develop games where next step is we can about it category and even annotate. Double the people weight besides and we are planning on viewer at 3 different levels. Like one is like scholars, another is like research and students, and third is the public. So now, depending on who's viewing, we have to present different data, right? You know, and different content. So this is like basically like 3 years that thinking, and then now I would need your help if we can come up with some sort of architecture or how to present data, depending on who might use it.
Right, okay. So that's sort of the deliverable is an architecture.
Yeah.
We'll discuss it and help you figure it out. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good.
And from Peter, more web, Drupal 7 web design and GUI to put together a CMS for the documentation of digital reconstructions of cultural heritage, digital of actual, extent, or hypothetical. I would imagine any digital model of a cultural heritage site, which might involve WebGL implementation in Drupal 7 and other kinds of annotations.
Okay.
Okay, so kind of a web. I'm
losing track of your categories.
I'm losing track of my categories. Bear with me. I'm looking for David. Looking for David there. Daisy, consultation on augmented reality technology. The AR scene and available applications are changing so fast. I would like info comparing various products, systems, and info on end user interface, trackers and places, placement, interactivity, and interoperability with 3D models. So basically, it's an environmental scan. Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect, perfect.
Great.
Jacob and Eric working as a team. I have to read this quickly. Essentially, an environmental scan. They're looking for the platform in which to deploy the thought experiment that Eric and Jacob talked about yesterday, and the workflow that would be necessary to implement said thought experiment in a 3D environment. And then, because there are 2 of them, they are doubling down on their hours. They're looking for a preliminary model of a choice vignette in a 3D environment. So excellent.
We'll have trouble with Eric's second choice for timing.
Okay.
Spring of 2015?
Do you think we could break it up if that were easier for you?
We could have a mud wrestling match afterwards.
We've already finished, though. Spring of 15's passed.
16.
16.
Okay.
Jacob had 16, so that's probably what you guys meant.
So you guys, this is all really great. These are a perfect starting point for Dave and his team. It's, again, not locked in stone. We want you to have conversations with one another. We want you to have conversations with these guys about when such activities might take place and what the ideal communication process might be. I mean, some of them, it's an environmental scan that's clearly defined. It's a task. There's a deliverable done. Others might involve a little more give and take and information exchange, and that will happen both over the course of this week, as Dave and his team are here with us, and in the subsequent months as we move into the academic year.